For nearly a quarter of a century, Vladimir Putin projected an image of absolute control. His grip on Russia seemed unbreakable. He cultivated a persona of strength and stability, positioning himself as the indispensable leader who could steer the nation through any storm. The world watched as he consolidated power, silenced opposition, and built a system that revolved entirely around his will. From the gilded halls of the Kremlin to the vast, frozen expanse of Siberia, his authority was rarely questioned. He was seen as the strongman who restored Russia's pride after the chaos and humiliation of the 90s, bringing order where there had been only uncertainty. For many Russians, Putin became synonymous with national revival and stability. But now, the foundations of his power are showing deep cracks, raising a once unthinkable question. Could the Putin era truly be coming to an end? The signs of decay are no longer hidden, but visible for all to see, both inside Russia and beyond its borders. The full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022 was meant to be his crowning achievement. A swift, decisive victory to cement his legacy as a historic leader. It was supposed to showcase Russian might and restore the country's influence on the world stage. Instead, it's become a catastrophic miscalculation, dragging Russia into a grinding, costly war that's drained its soldiers, wealth, and global standing. The economy has faltered, sanctions have bitten deep, and ordinary Russians are feeling the pain in their daily lives. The aura of invincibility has been shattered by military failures, economic hardship, and even armed rebellion on Russian soil. The once unthinkable has happened. Open dissent, both within the ranks of the military and among the people, has exposed the regime's vulnerabilities. What was once a monolithic power structure now appears fractured and fragile. The unity that held the elite together is splintering, and trust in the system is eroding rapidly. Whispers of doubt among the elite have grown into warnings, and public discontent has erupted into open defiance. Protests, once swiftly crushed, now flare up with increasing frequency, signaling a society on the edge of change. The war in Ukraine may determine not just Ukraine's future but Russia's as well. The outcome will shape the fate of both nations, and perhaps the entire region for generations to come. Putin, once isolated from criticism, now faces a slow, corrosive decline, his iron grip trembling. The isolation that once protected him now leaves him vulnerable, as even his closest advisors begin to question his decisions. The question is no longer if his power is weakening, but how quickly it's slipping away. The unraveling of an autocrat is underway, and the world is watching to see what comes next. Nothing exposed Putin's fragility more than the Wagner Group's mutiny, a moment that sent shockwaves through the Russian state and the world beyond. For years, Putin had cultivated an image of unshakable control, but this event revealed just how vulnerable his grip on power truly was. In June 2023, Yevgeny Prigozhin, once a close ally, turned his mercenary army against the state, seizing a key military headquarters and boldly advancing toward Moscow itself. The world watched in disbelief as a private army challenged the Kremlin's authority on Russian soil. For 24 tense hours, the specter of civil war loomed large. Russian helicopters fired on Russian convoys, and in Rostov crowds openly cheered the Wagner rebels. The country teetered on the edge of chaos, with ordinary citizens caught in the uncertainty. The rebellion exposed deep frustration and division within the military leadership, and by extension, cast a harsh light on Putin himself. The cracks in the system were suddenly visible for all to see. Prigozhin skillfully tapped into public anger over the war's mismanagement and corruption, showing that there was an alternative center of power, one that resonated with many Russians disillusioned by the Kremlin's failures. Putin's televised response, first vowing to crush the traitors, then abruptly cutting a deal, was a profound humiliation. The world saw a leader forced to compromise, his authority undermined in real time. The state's monopoly on violence was shattered, and the aftermath, including Prigozhin's suspicious death, did little to restore Putin's image. Instead, it deepened the sense of instability and uncertainty across Russia. The episode left a permanent scar on the regime, revealing that Putin's power rests on a precarious balance of competing interests, fragile alliances, and simmering discontent within his own ranks. Now the regime looks dangerously unstable, its authority no longer absolute. The illusion of invincibility has been shattered, and the future of Putin's rule is more uncertain than ever before. For over 2 decades, Vladimir Putin's rule has relied on a carefully constructed system of patronage and personal loyalty. Russia's elites, oligarchs, top officials, and business magnates remained steadfastly loyal to the Kremlin. As long as Putin delivered what they valued most, stability, access to wealth, and a sense of national pride. This arrangement created a powerful, if fragile, alliance at the very top of Russian society. But the war in Ukraine has shattered this delicate balance, upending the very foundation of Putin's power. Instead of the glory and influence they once enjoyed, Moscow's elite now find themselves increasingly isolated from the West, targeted by sanctions, and watching their fortunes evaporate almost overnight. The yachts, penthouses, and lucrative Western markets that once symbolized their success are now out of reach. The war has brought only ruin, uncertainty, and a sense of betrayal. Disillusionment is no longer whispered in private. Technocrats and business leaders are quietly leaving the country, seeking safer futures abroad, while even the powerful FSB, once Putin's staunchest ally, now grumbles about the mounting costs and the direction of the war. The old transactional system, loyalty in exchange for wealth and privilege, has broken down. The risks of staying loyal now far outweigh the rewards, and fear is replacing trust among the elite. This slow but steady erosion of elite support is emerging as the greatest threat to Putin's grip on power, more dangerous than any street protest. Public protests can be crushed with force, but when those who run the economy and the security apparatus begin to see their leader as a liability, the regime faces a true existential crisis from within. Each new military setback, every fresh round of sanctions, and every loss of international standing pushes these powerful insiders closer to considering the unthinkable, removing Putin from power to save themselves. The calculus is shifting rapidly, and the very bedrock of Putin's rule, the loyalty of Russia's elite, is now visibly crumbling, leaving the future of the Kremlin more uncertain than ever. In a system where dissent is crushed, a recent letter from 12 senior Federation Council members sent shockwaves through Moscow. These are not fringe figures, they're part of Putin's own elite. Their message: end the war in Ukraine, or risk total economic and state collapse. The personal risk is enormous. Criticizing the war is a criminal offense. Their letter is a cold, hard assessment of Russia's dire situation, outlining the systemic rot under the weight of war and sanctions. By framing their plea as a matter of national survival, they offer Putin a political off-ramp. The letter reportedly urges him to consider a US-brokered peace proposal, withdraw from Ukraine in exchange for lifting sanctions. Its existence marks a pivotal moment. A faction within the ruling class now sees negotiation as the only way forward. Their gamble highlights the terrifying reality they see unfolding. The senator's letter is a detailed indictment of Russia's failing economy, listing 10 signs of impending collapse. The ruble's value has plummeted, driving up costs and fueling inflation. The government prints money to fund the war, devaluing savings and pushing basic necessities out of reach. A severe labor shortage cripples industries as men are sent to the front or flee conscription. Foreign investment and the tech sector have collapsed, leaving Russia isolated and technologically stagnant. War spending consumes the budget, draining the national wealth fund and forcing cuts to healthcare and infrastructure. Russia is cut off from global finance, its infrastructure is degrading, and poverty is rising as public services collapse. The economic foundations are crumbling under the weight of endless war. When Western sanctions hit, many doubted they'd work, but 2.5 years later, the damage is undeniable. Sanctions have cut off Western microchips and components, forcing Russia to rely on outdated equipment and scavenged parts. The withdrawal of Western companies has meant lost jobs, declining quality, and fewer choices for ordinary Russians. The aviation industry is cannibalizing its own fleets, raising serious safety concerns. Financial sanctions have frozen central bank reserves and cut Russia off from global payments, crippling the Kremlin's ability to stabilize the economy. The pain is now a daily reality: rising prices, medicine shortages, and growing uncertainty. The senator's letter confirms what many suspected: sanctions are working, pushing Russia toward a breaking point. The Kremlin's boasts of resilience have been exposed as hollow. The slow economic strangulation is squeezing the life out of the system. Some of the harshest assessments of Russia's military failures come from Western military professionals. Retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg bluntly stated, "Russia is losing the war in Ukraine." Putin failed to achieve any main objectives. He didn't take Kyiv, topple the government, or stop NATO's expansion. Instead, his actions pushed Finland and Sweden into the alliance. Russian casualties have surpassed 500,000, gutting the professional army. Elite forces were decimated in early battles, replaced by poorly trained conscripts and convicts. Russia now relies on attritional warfare, gaining only a few hundred meters at a time at enormous cost. The army's offensive capability is gone, it's simply trying to hold on. The math is simple. Russia cannot sustain these losses forever. The war has become a slow bleed, not a path to victory. The evidence of failure is overwhelming. The sense of failure isn't just from the West. Russian pro-war military bloggers echo it too. Once cheerleaders for the invasion, their channels now criticize the military command, exposing equipment shortages and tactical blunders. Their influence is massive as they're seen as patriots, making their criticism even more dangerous for the Kremlin. Globally, leaders like Macron and Scholz say Russia has already lost geopolitically, becoming a vassal to China and a pariah. Over 50 countries support Ukraine, showing a global consensus against Russian aggression. The contrast between Kremlin propaganda and grim reality is stark. Russia has sacrificed a generation and mortgaged its future for minuscule territorial gains. It's turned Ukraine into a sworn enemy and isolated itself. This is a Pyrrhic victory, if it's a victory at all. September 2025. The war has raged for over 3.5 years. The initial patriotic fervor is gone, replaced by exhaustion and despair. The conflict's consequences are felt in every Russian family: empty chairs, lost loved ones, and economic hardship. The promise of a fortress economy has proven hollow. Middle-class comforts are disappearing. The social contract, political freedom traded for stability and prosperity, has been broken. Cracks are everywhere. Desperate letters from senators, complaints from soldiers, and a fraying system. Fear of endless war and collapse now rivals fear of the regime itself. The Wagner mutiny showed the regime's brittleness. The leadership's response showed its vulnerability. The pressure is building, the foundation is cracking, and Putin may be running out of time. Even the most autocratic regimes can fall when faith in the leader is lost.